to this very special programme as the Cardinals enter into the Conclave to decide who will be the next Pope. We are live above the rooftops, as you can see, of the Vatican and of St. Peter's Square as well. I'm Stuart Norval. Good to have you with us this evening. Well, earlier today, the Cardinals paraded from Pauline Chapel into the Sistine Chapel. They took an oath to maintain secrecy and defend the Holy See. Then they came extra omnes, the call for everyone to get out of the chapel. And in the last few seconds, we are now getting black smoke coming out of the chimney. I don't know if you can make it out behind us. I suspect not in the dark behind me, but the black smoke for the first time is coming out of the chimney exactly as we go to air. We were expecting it possibly up to 2 hours or even more ago, but it is coming out very late. Black smoke, of course, fumata nearer as it's known, means that as of yet, we still do not have a new Pope. Well, let me bring in straight away Seema Gupta, our correspondent, who's been down in the square, in fact, over the last hour with those people who were waiting for that smoke. Seema, changing things a little bit because we're seeing that smoke immediately now. What kind of reaction do you think there'll be in the square?
Well, I think really, I mean, it was an hour and a half of waiting, and the mood in the square, one of intense expectation, frustration as well. It really felt like everyone was waiting and wanting to be part of a spectacle, wanting to see this vision. And according to the Vatican news outlet, Vatican News, there were some 45,000 people gathered there. I was just one of them down there. Some getting a bit frustrated because wondering why it's taking so long. And it is a bit strange that it did take so long for the smoke to come out.
Any
One
theories?
wonders. Well, there are lots of theories, but they're all theories really, because as you know, the conclave, they're totally secluded in there. We have no access to what's going on in there. So it's all speculation. Could there have been discussion? But as far as we know, they're supposed to be voting in there. But really, it's up to them to decide how it is that they want to go. And we'll have to see what happens, of course, on Thursday as this process continues. But finally, a wait of, for a lot of people, we thought it was going to happen at 7.
Yeah.
But instead, it's way past that hour.
It's taken a lot longer. Well, we have finally seen that black smoke anyway. We've been waiting for it for all that time. Seema's going to stay with us, but first of all, let's just have a little bit of a recap to bring us up to date with what has brought us to this point.
After more than 2 weeks with no one at the helm, all eyes are on Rome. The priorities of the church and its future have been the stuff of extensive public debate in recent weeks, but 133 men will now decide.
You can't predict what God wants.
Their day began with a mass in St. Peter's Basilica, in which the Dean of the College of Cardinals delivered a sermon reminding the Cardinals that this is a complex and troubled moment in history, amid wars and the rise of populism.
Today, the world expects a great deal from the Church, to guard those fundamental human and spiritual values without which human coexistence will neither improve nor serve future generations.
Then, after lunch, silent prayers in the Pauline Chapel, a moment of quiet reflection before the sea of red vestments processed into the neighbouring Sistine Chapel, singing the hymn Creator Veni Spiritus, calling on the saints and the Holy Spirit to guide them in their choice. Then, one by one, the cardinals gave a vow to protect the secrecy of the conclave on pain of excommunication, before Archbishop Diego Rovelli called out extra omnes, expelling all but the voting cardinals from the room. Conclave comes from the Latin conclave, meaning with a key, and, true to its name, the conclave will remain locked away from the world until they elect a new pontiff with a 2/3 majority or 89 votes under the frescoes of Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel. And for the outside world, the only news will be from this chimney, black for an inconclusive vote, white for a new pope.
Well, that's the recap of the day, but just to remind you, if you are just joining us here on France 24, in the last few moments we've seen that black smoke behind us, meaning that as of this moment, Nobody has yet been elected Pope, and I'm just looking over the balustrade behind me and I can see thousands of people starting to stream away from St. Peter's Square. Seema, I mean, the number of people there, you were telling me, was quite incredible, a lot more than when you covered the last handover of the papacy.
Exactly. I mean, particularly on this first vote, because generally most people do believe that this first vote doesn't always result in an election. In fact, it hasn't happened in centuries. So for that first vote back in 2013, I don't remember seeing this kind of a crowd of people. I mean, as we know, 45,000 people turning up. I think also the fact that it lasted so long made people wonder, have they actually made a decision? I think it is significant to note because this first vote is really telling for the Cardinals inside the Sistine Chapel, because this is the one that will help them see where the tendencies are going in terms of which kind of groups are supporting if a particular candidate has been shown to have a significant number of votes. So it's important for the Cardinals in there. Why it lasted so long is going to be something that everyone's going to be speculating on. But we do know it does continue on Thursday.
Yeah, now is the real wait, I suppose. I mean, we've had to wait just a couple of hours already, but now we have to wait until we eventually get the white smoke.
Exactly. And, you know, this can continue for several days. I mean, according to the Constitution at the Vatican, it's another 3 days of voting before they take 1 day of a pause if no white smoke is seen and no pope is chosen. And that's supposed to be a pause for meditation and prayer and perhaps to discuss how to go forward. And then they continue again for another 7 rounds of voting. But of course, we've not seen something that lasts that long in modern times. Pope Francis himself was found to be Pope, and we saw the Habemus Papam, or we have a Pope, just up on the second day. So tomorrow, really, everyone will be looking to see whether that's the case. Are the Cardinals united around one candidate?
Seema, good to have you with us. That's Seema Gupta, who's our correspondent here in Rome. Of course, she'll continue reporting for us over the coming days as we wait for that white smoke to eventually come out of the chimney. So Seema gave us a bit of a hint there as to how the conclave works. Let's find out a little bit more about it in this report now.
It's a process that's remained virtually unchanged for the last 8 centuries. The highly secretive method of choosing a pope is known as the papal conclave. In theory, any baptised Catholic man can be in the running for leader, but in reality, nearly every pope has been a cardinal before they were elected. It's here in the Vatican's iconic Sistine Chapel that the College of Cardinals is convening. 133 cardinals under the age of 80 vote in secret for their chosen candidate, writing his name on a ballot and placing it in a chalice on the altar. After each round of voting, smoke is released from the chapel's chimney, black smoke indicating that no candidate has been selected, while white smoke signals that the church has a new leader. The process is shrouded in secrecy, with communication devices prohibited during a conclave. Cardinals risk being excommunicated if they leak information. If no candidate receives the required 2/3 majority during the first ballot, another round of voting takes place. There can be up to 4 rounds per day. Under relatively new rules introduced by Pope Benedict XVI, if no one is selected after 33 rounds, the Cardinals go to a runoff of the top 2 contenders. It's with the famous words Habemus Papam, meaning we have a pope, that the newly elected leader is presented to thousands of eager faithful from the main balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. Donning a fresh white cassock and a new papal name honouring a saint or a previous pontiff, the new pope takes the reins of the Catholic Church.
So that's how the conclave works, and we will follow it, of course, over the next few days here on France 24. Well, joining me now is Hendro Munsterman. He's journalist and Vatican watcher, if you like, for the Dutch national daily Netherlands Dagblad. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us. We've had this, apparent delay of a couple of hours, really. People were expecting that smoke a few hours ago. Any theories as to why that might be yourself?
No, it's a clear delay, though. So clearly something happened, something unexpected happened. There could be, from my opinion, 2 different things. Either one of the cardinals had a health problem, maybe needed a doctor, or even worse. Another theory would be, and this would not have been the first time, is that there has been a problem with the voting. In 2013, for example, during the 5th vote, a cardinal by accident, probably put two bulletins inside instead of one, and then the whole vote had to be done again.
Right.
We have 133 cardinals now, which are more than last time, and every cardinal, one by one, has to bring his vote there. So that might have explained the delay.
It does show, doesn't it, the spectacle of the thing. I mean, obviously there are deep religious connotations behind everything, but for people who are perhaps not religious, it's a fascinating procedure, isn't it?
It's old, it's fascinating, and in the same time it's very modern because the images are so beautiful. It's liturgy and it's theater, and it's all in the same time, you know. And it's. I think this is also. It says something about the special function that the Pope has. He's a head of state and he's a church leader. All our human categories that apply elsewhere don't apply here. This is a special place that doesn't fit in our human mind structures, I think. Yeah.
And what are your thoughts about how long this could take? There's been a lot of discussions over the last few days about these cardinals not really knowing each other very well. There's 133 of them. 80% of them are new cardinals, aren't they? All appointed by Pope Francis over the last 12 years. And a lot of them come from very different parts of the world, much more extreme parts of the world, you might say, than they used to come from.
Clearly, yeah. The cardinal from Tonga, for example, he needed 2 boats and 3 airplanes to get here. By the way, he was one of the first and the ones that arrived, which was very beautiful. But you know, so and one of the problems of Pope Francis was that he never made them meet each other. Only once during his 12 months he called them to Rome for a consistory to meet together, and I think that's also one of the reasons why after these 12 days of preparation, this conclave could take a little bit more time than the last 2 conclaves that we had. That had already showed the Pope one day after the beginning.
12 days of preparation. Presumably, some candidates have started to emerge, though.
Yeah. So what we hear when we talk to the cardinals in private, off the record, of course, it's all secret. But what we hear from cardinals and people close to cardinals is that several candidates spoke, and several candidates also made an impression on their colleagues when they spoke. And during the last days, there is one cardinal from the Philippines that suddenly showed up, almost from nowhere, and everybody was looking at Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines, and suddenly there is Cardinal David, 66 years old, which we have the impression that he made an impression, that he touched the hearts of some cardinals. Is he too progressive? Will he be able to get 2/3 of the votes? It's not clear at all, but at least it's somebody that will count during these days behind these closed doors of the Sistine Chapel.
And what's so strange is, of course, we have no idea now what is going on. I mean, in modern times, we're so used to, aren't we, seeing television voting shows all the time. Social media gives us reactions to anything within a few seconds. But with this, everything is behind closed doors.
Everything is behind closed doors, and there are 2 reasons for that. The first reason is they are completely disconnected from the rest of the world. And this, of course, is to avoid influences from lobby groups, powers, China, Russia, I don't know what, but also big lobby groups that have a lot of money, like in the United States. But the second reason is also very interesting. I think it means that whenever a pope comes out, there is no cardinal that can say, all the cardinals can say that he voted for him. It's so secret that it serves the unity of the church, because when the Pope is out, it's the Pope of all the cardinals and not only of a party, you know. And I think this is one of the reasons that this conclave needs also the secrecy, because the church is very divided now, not only between liberals and conservatives, if I may say so, but also from continents. What is possible in Africa is not possible in Europe or in Asia or in Oceania. And so this unity has to be served, and the secrecy serves this unity.
And how do you get over that problem? Because trying to satisfy all those different blocks, if you like, of the cardinals is extremely difficult, isn't it?
So this is first of all, this is the biggest conclave that we ever had, 133 cardinals, as you already said. 70 countries represented. We never had so many countries. Last time there were only 48, which means 22 countries more. And they come from all over the planet. One of the things one of the challenges, and that Pope Francis already talked about, he called it a healthy decentralization, which means maybe not all the issues have to be treated in Rome, but could also be treated on a lower level, maybe by a continent or by a local episcopal conference or by a diocese. The problem is that Pope Francis, during these 12 years, has never really made big steps to go there. But this is probably one of the things that these cardinals have been talking about and are thinking about. We saw the gay blessing, the gay couple blessing that Pope Francis allowed a few months ago. That went very bad in Africa. Many people in the West were very happy about it, that gay couples can now be blessed by a priest. But in Africa, this is something that got a lot of criticism, also by the bishops. The African bishop conferences said together, we are not going to bless gay people here. This is for us not acceptable. So we see there, and then the Pope said, okay, I will not oblige you to do. So that means that a kind of diversity in the speed of the church and the diversity in the application of the rules in the church is possible and will probably in the next years get more and more diverse.
And Africa is becoming more and more important, isn't it? It's one of the few areas where the number of Catholics is growing.
But, so the Catholic Church is still growing. It grows almost in the same speed as humanity grows, like for 8 billion people now. In Africa it grows fast, but this has a demographical growth. But the number of the cardinals of Africa is quite low. There are only 17 cardinals, which is not at all. If you compare it to the number of Catholics in Africa, it's very little. Yeah.
Mm. You mentioned earlier the disunity problem. The difficulty is, of course, if this does drag on, the fear is that it shows that there is a real disunity within the church.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that the theme of unity and disunity is used by the conservative part of the College of Cardinals. They use unity and the risk of a schism as a method, as an instrument to get a more conservative pope. Because if the idea is that if you put a more progressive pope, then the church could split up. The cardinals have to see if this is a real problem or if this is just something that they use to get a more conservative pope. I would say that at this moment, most of the cardinals, and I think much more than 2/3, are very happy with the horizon, with the direction that Pope Francis gave to the church. That might change some little things, maybe more some decisions that could be taken by a pope more in collegiality with his brother bishops and cardinals. But in the end, they want to go on this same direction.
You think his legacy will live on, then?
Oh yeah, his legacy will probably live on. The question is who can take this legacy in his hands, move it forward, and will these cardinals get 2/3 of the votes? The minority is conservative. Are there more than 1/3 or not? This is the question that will be seen in tomorrow or the day after.
Finally, how important do you think this whole process is for the church? I mean, obviously there's the renewal of the papacy, but also just having these thousands of people, all these television crews here as well. It must just, I mean, it's good PR, isn't it, for the Catholic Church?
So maybe the first thing, all these cardinals, they have seen how many thousands of people came here to St. Peter to say goodbye to the Pope, came to St. Peter's Square for the funeral. And if you go to Santa Maria Maggiore in the center of Rome, every day until now there are lines of people that want to visit the grave of the Pope. A German cardinal said, these people are voting with their feet. They don't have a vote inside the conclave, but with their feet, by going to Francis and saying goodbye, they show the cardinals, this is the way that we want to go further with our church. And if I can add a little bit, one little thing, I think one of the most important shifts of Pope Francis's legacy and of Pope Francis's pontificate is that he introduced mercy in the doctrine of the church. Until now, the church had a very clear doctrine, for example, on sexuality, homosexuality, contraception, etc. And then in the confessional, the church was very merciful. Everything was forgivable also. But the mercy was something that was very a private, individual. What Francis did, he took this mercy out of the confessional and took it out in the preaching. So the mercy is not only application of the doctrine, mercy, pastoral application of the doctrine, mercy is also doctrine. And this is the biggest shift of Pope Francis, I think, and this is something that the next Pope probably will have to take over and bring further.
Hendro Munsterman, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today. That's Hendro Munsterman, journalist and Vatican watcher for the Dutch national daily Netherlands Dagblad. If you are just joining us here on France 24, just looking over the balustrade once again behind me, you can see still thousands of people thronging away now from St. Peter's Square. Around about 20-25 minutes ago, we saw that first black smoke coming out of the chimney above the Sistine Chapel, indicating or telling us that at this stage, no Pope has been been elected, but that vote very, very late. It wasn't until after 9 p.m. local time, when normally that would come about 7 p.m. or soon after 7 p.m. So still many questions to ask when they come out of that conclave as to exactly what's happened on the first evening. No doubt we will find out a little bit later on. Well, of course, Catholics have been watching all the day's events very, very closely right around the globe as well. Let's bring you this report on what happened.
Tourists and Catholics have come from all over the world to witness history being made. Here in St. Peter's Square, Mass in the Vatican Basilica was broadcast on screens. When the date of the conclave was announced, this French Catholic booked her tickets to Rome to see the next pope.
We think we'll see the Pope. We don't know who it is yet, but we'll have seen him among the cardinals. Being spiritually present at this moment, it takes on a new dimension.
This family originally planned to see Pope Francis.
We organized a trip quickly, in just 3 months. And since Pope Francis had a great sense of humor, he invited us to the election of the next Pope. So in terms of its historical significance for us and for our son, this is really special.
There are also some who came to St. Peter's Square by pure coincidence.
We're here at the right time and we're glad we came in the end. We can attend without necessarily having planned to.
We'd like to see white smoke if possible.
Less than 2 weeks after Pope Francis's funeral, mourning and contemplation now give way to hope.
It's wonderful. It's just wonderful to see all the Catholics and all the Christians, everybody coming together, everybody so hopeful.
This afternoon, the heavy doors of the Sistine Chapel closed, signaling the beginning of the Catholic Church's conclave to elect the next pope.
Yeah, the reaction there from Catholics right around the world on this highly historic day, of course. Well, joining us now here on the programme is Mario Giro. He's head of international relations of the Catholic Association, the Community of Saint-Edigio. He's also was former Italian Deputy Foreign Minister. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us on the programme.
Good evening.
First of all, tell us about Pope Francis. I know you met him many times.
Yeah.
What was he like?
He was a very direct person, you know. When he wants to tell you something, he told you, and also bluntly. It was a very, very Argentinian character, and someone who was used to live a very simple life, and with in the periphery, in the outskirts, with poor, etc. We met first time when he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires, before he was even a cardinal, in the outskirts of Buenos Aires, where Sant'Egidio exists also.
And what did he tell you about what he wanted to see for the church?
For him, church, his idea of the church was the church of the external, not the church of the internal. I heard some cardinal during these days saying we have to give back the church to the Catholics. It was exactly the opposite that Francis was thinking. Giving the church to everybody, open all the doors.
I mean, he certainly reached out, didn't he, to many different parts of the world where the Catholic Church in the past had been retreating a little bit?
Yes, I think so, and I think we will see the fruits of what he did in the future. And the next Pope will have to manage with this, because now if the message has flown over the outside the structure, the institutions. You know, the church is a balance between charism and institutions.
And what do you think then the future is for the church under the new leader? Presumably it depends who that leader is.
Yes, of course. There is a personal touch of the next Pope, as Francis had his own personal touch, and also John Paul II, etc., Ratzinger also. But I think that the church has very much changed in these years, 12 years of Pope Francis. Poor, immigration, peace, those things have marked the Catholic people. And probably are a little bit uncomfortable for a part of the clergy, but that is the reality. The church is in a changing world, is a changing church.
You're talking about the more conservative side of the church, I assume. I mean, how can they be kept on board, if you like, if the church does continue down
this
Francis's route?
This is the real question. You're right. The real question for the next pope: how to maintain unity with this diversity of internal of the church. The conservatives are a minority. In the past, they were a majority, but they are very vocal. And of course, we have not to divide the Christians of social concern with the Christians with only moral concerns. We have to merge the two. And this is the challenge of the new Pope.
Yeah, I mean, the community that you work for is all about encouraging interfaith meetings, about conflict prevention, that kind of thing. Why do you think that is so important for the church to be involved?
No, it's important because the church has remained the only global institution that at its top is for peace in every kind, in every moment, no accepting and delegitimating war as an instrument, as a political instrument. And this is not only Pope Francis. This is one century of theological approach of the Vatican, starting with the First World War, when Benedict XV said it is a useless massacre. And it was criticized by Archbishop of Vienna and France and Paris on the both sides. Because for the church, war is always a civil war, a war among brothers. Poor and also a changing world, which is the next model of social justice for the future. This is another important question. Then we have relation with the Jews. It was a very important improving from Nostra Aetate, the Council, to Netanyahu, and now we have a lot of troubles because of the war in Gaza. Every evening, the Pope Francis was calling on phone the Gaza parish. This is a signal. Then we have also the question of migrants. In that question, Pope Francis was against all the leaders in the Western world, without exception. And
notably Italy's leader.
Now. Even if the relation between Madame Meloni, Prime Minister, and personal relation and Pope Francis was good. But this question, also with Trump, is good, but this question is dividing.
So impossible it's impossible to separate politics and religion, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Mainly it's impossible to separate geopolitical issues with religion.
Yeah. So
more than day-by-day politics.
We'll talk about the individual candidates in a moment, but what kind of candidate then are you looking for?
I think that they are trying to find a mediation between charism and institution. Someone who will keep the house in order, but in the same time will not close the door and continue to be charismatic.
Okay, well, let's look at some of those candidates then, some of the names that are in the frame. There are so many of them, but we picked a few of them out for you in this report.
Who will succeed Francis as the next head of the Catholic Church? A few names are already being mentioned. First, the Vatican Secretary of State, 70-year-old Pietro Parolin. He's an experienced diplomat and seen as a compromise candidate between progressives and conservatives. Another Italian, Matteo Maria Zuppi, the Archbishop of Bologna, is also a possibility. Like Francis, the 69-year-old cardinal is known for his social commitment to migrants and the poor and cares little about pomp and protocol. Outside Europe, there's Cardinal Sergio de Rocha from Brazil or Luis Antonio Tagle in the Philippines.
The men in the conclave come from Ulaanbaatar, Lesotho, East Timor, so truly from the four corners of the world, with concerns that are not the same as those of the European heavyweights.
It's not just where the next pope comes from, but also what direction that pope takes the church. Could the keys be given to another progressive? Jean-Marc Aveline, the Archbishop of Marseille, shares the same views on immigration and church relations with other religions as Francis. On the other hand, the College of Cardinals could choose a more conservative-leaning pope like Robert Serra, shown on the left, or German Gerhard Müller. There's also politics at play.
We must not underestimate the influence of the Catholic Church's very large financial sources, which can come also from the United States, from Africa and elsewhere, and which want to refocus the Church. They want to get even with the Pope, who wanted to decentralize his Church and who wanted a Church that reflected the poorest and those who suffer.
Whoever is selected, the choice of the future pope will send a strong signal in a context of growing tension within the Church.
Well, one of those potential candidates then is Cardinal Pierbattista Pizzaballa, and we're going to cross live now to Jerusalem and talk to our correspondent Noga Tarnopolsky, who joins us from there. Noga, tell us then who Pierbattista Pizzaballa is exactly.
Pierbattista Pizzaballa is the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem and the first Cardinal of Jerusalem in history, installed by Pope Francis as part of Francis's move to bring back Jerusalem, the Mother Church, into the heart, at least of theology and of thinking, in the power corridors of the Vatican. He's a very unusual, remarkable man. He would make probably, I think, a transformational pope. He's Italian-born, but he has lived his entire adult life and his entire career in Jerusalem, in this city that's at the heart of the Church, but where Catholics and Christians altogether are a minority among Jews and Muslims. He has a PhD from the Hebrew University, written in Hebrew. He's a guy very adept here in local customs and very beloved in the city of Jerusalem.
Yeah, as you say, very beloved. Tell us about the reactions there of people to him being named, if you like, as a potential candidate.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because in Jerusalem, obviously an important Catholic city, but in the past, the only time we've had this kind of a buzz around town regarding Catholic affairs is when the popes, different popes, have come here on pilgrimages, including Francis. But now, tonight, I was at an event with European diplomats and locals, a Europe Day event, and almost the only subject of conversation was the closing of the doors at the Conclave and the possibility that this, local boy could be chosen. A very wide range of local clergymen and clergywomen support him fervently. And I do think that that is possibly an important point that could be reflected in the Vatican. He's someone who manages to gain the respect and even the devotion of people who don't necessarily agree among themselves about everything. He also has an enigmatic quality in terms of these more culture war questions that preoccupy the Catholic Church in Europe and in the US, in the sense that being a Holy Land prelate, he has not had to really express himself on questions of women in the priesthood or abortion or same-sex marriage, as others have.
Noga, thanks very much. Noga Tarnopolsky, they're talking to us live there from Jerusalem. And Marino Giro is still with us. I mean, Pierbattista Pizzaballa, would you think he would be a good candidate?
He's one of the candidates. The only thing that he was described with is that he's too young. And which
if
is
they're too young, that means they may stick around for a little too long.
It's a strange thing, because which is the boutade here in Rome among the clergy. We want an holy father, not an eternal father.
Yeah, because it's important to renew every now and again, isn't it, for the whole of the Catholic Church. What about other candidates? I mean, there's one candidate who's part of your community, yourself, Matteo Zuppi.
Matteo Zuppi, Archbishop of Bologna, of course, was my responsible when I was a teenager. Then it's a candidate of the heart. And then there are others, of course, the Secretary of State, Cardinal Parolin. These three put again Italy hoping to have a pope, but it's not sure because there are other candidates coming from Asia, for example. It's important. Pope Francis named a lot of cardinals in Asia, more than in Africa. And there are more Catholics in Africa than in Asia, because he was, in his prophetic view, was the future is in Asia. Then Asia is important. We have also some cardinal in the Curia, for example, Prevost, for example, that is an American, but was in Peru and now is in Rome, as another possibility. There is the conservatives want the Cardinal Erdo as the Hungarian as their candidates. We don't know. It's very difficult to make speculation on that.
Yeah, but Matteo Zuppi is definitely the man that you're hoping for.
But as we say in Rome, what the cardinal will decide is the good decision.
Yeah, there's another phrase, isn't there, that we've heard a lot over the past few weeks, that he who enters as a pope comes out a cardinal. I mean, we're giving all these names, but we're giving all these names, aren't we? And quite often it turns out to be somebody completely different.
Yes, but you know, when Ratzinger entered Pope in Conclave, was named Pope, also Montini, Paul VI. It depends, you know. We don't know. There are several possibilities. What I can say, if they decide tomorrow, it will be Cardinal Parolin.
Because he's the obvious person. He's effectively was the deputy pope before, wasn't he?
Yes, in some way it was always with Pope Francis. He has another personal touch, of course.
But is it not too much of the same thing if he was to be elected?
No, I don't think, because it's considered a geopolitician, a diplomat, a man very wise, very calm. It's different. It's a very different, anthropologically, humanity is different from Francis. Even he has the same ideas, of course.
Do you think that can work in the modern age? I mean, one criticism of him is that perhaps he's not dynamic enough.
I don't know. Church is normally slow. Church normally doesn't like, Catholic Church, to have the agenda dictated by the word, by the secularity, and I think that it will continue to remain like this.
You don't think there's any possibility then that we will get a surprise in that we will get a more conservative candidate? Because it is an option.
More conservative, I don't think so. But I want to precise this: can be conservative in moralities or moral issues, but not conservative in economical or social justice issues.
Yeah, there are many who, for example, on the environment are very concerned about environment issues, but then when it comes to more home issues or social issues, as you say, they may be more conservative.
Normally, we have the European, the Westerns and the Europeans have this focus on morality, for example, homosexualities, marriage of homosexuals, or the question of women, etc., etc. But it's not the same perception in the south of the church, in Latin America, so and so, in Africa at all, and also in Asia. And it depends. Conservative in what?
And a lot of those issues, of course, have been around for years. They may have changed slightly as perceptions around the world have changed in perceptions in individual countries. But for those issues that have been around for years, there's no way of solving them, is there? There's no way of saying, OK, this is what we're doing. Everybody has to follow the same thing, because it really does depend in different countries
it's not
what the local traditions are.
Yeah, you're right, but the church is not a dictatorship. The Pope cannot oblige everybody, and the concern for unity is very important. For example, what will do the Catholics? We'll see what is going on with the moral issues in the other church, in the sister church, Anglican church, historical Protestant church. And we see, and they see, that there are questions of unity. The unity is shaken because of this. Then they will not move. Yeah. This is also a question. It's very difficult to imagine a solution for everybody. Probably the flexibility will be a just balance. But we have also to consider that, for example, Pope Francis was a pope that was saying capitalism has to fall like the Berlin Wall, and also quoted like killers, the medical doctors that make abortions.
Yeah.
that is progressist or conservative. It's difficult to say.
It's difficult to say, that's very true. How does the church, do you think, survive in the future? What does it need to do to ensure that it remains
to remain
relevant?
To remain open, I think. That's very important. I think the church has its own crisis, the abuses, for example, etc., but is no more in crisis than the society, the Western world, Europe, democracy, human rights. We have a world of wars, and we need a church that is the only global institution because it's referring to the global good. And we see that also the superpowers are choosing their own good only.
And is that the way to bring people together, do you think?
I think yes, they have to speak to the young people. That's a challenge, particularly the African young people, because they are very numerous.
I mean, we're living in a world, aren't we, of social media nowadays, of mobile phones, of not necessarily competing for people's souls, but competing
Pope
for their time.
Francis had 55 million of followers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now the successor, what we'll do with Pontifex.
Yeah. So in other words, all of that has to be taken into account by
absolutely.
and brought along with religion to become part of the new modern world.
You're right.
And are you confident that that's possible? I mean, as you look ahead, 10, 20, 30 years, do you think that the church will be able to navigate all those new innovations which are inevitably on the way?
The church has navigated in other innovation in the past centuries, has confronted very difficult moment. I think the church will find a way to navigate also in our world.
Let's finish off then by talking about the conclave. It's underway. It's been underway for a few hours. For those viewers who are just joining us, we had the black smoke not that long ago now, around about 35, 40 minutes ago, came out of the chimney on the top of the Sistine Chapel, showing, therefore, that at this stage a pope has not been elected. But it is an historic moment, isn't it, that is going to be seen over the next few days, and a moment that is obviously, we've seen by the crowds behind us, bringing a lot of people together, and to a certain extent, after the sad loss of Pope Francis, bringing about a sort of renewed coming together of people of the Catholic faith.
I think if you see the queue of people going to greet the tomb of Pope Francis in Santa Maria Maggiore, it's shocking. People going, very long queues. I think that there is something emotional in this conclave. It's an historical moment, and the people are willing to have someone that speaks to their heart. And I think that this is the very difficult job of the Cardinals.
And do you think whoever is selected, people will be able to get behind?
At the beginning, yes. Then is the challenge of the new elected Pope to continue to speak and to have words of sense in a life that is losing sense.
And
a lot of solitude, a lot of the individualism.
Yeah, and why is that important then, to bring religion into that, to try and turn it around, try and turn people's minds around and give them something positive?
As a politician, I would say religion is important because it preserves the social fabric of the society. Mm-hmm. But there is also more spiritual important reasons for that.
Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us. Mario Giro, Head of International Relations of the Catholic Association in the Community of Sant'Egidio, also former Italian Deputy Foreign Minister. Thank you very much for being with us on the programme today. If you are just joining us, we're on the rooftops, as you can see, with the Vatican behind me and St. Peter's Square below. When we came on air around about 40 minutes ago, the black smoke started coming out of the chimney on the top of the Sistine Chapel. At the time, St. Peter's Square behind me was absolutely thronging with people, thousands of people, a lot more, as Seema Gupta, our correspondent, told us at the top of the programme, than she saw here when she was here for the last papal handover back in 2013. So there's a real sense of excitement and enthusiasm amongst the faithful as to who the new Pope will be. We will be following that, of course, over the next few days here on France 24, not least tomorrow, when we may get a result. The last 4 popes have been decided pretty quickly, so we shall see whether that continues continues to take effect, I suppose, over the next few days. Just to give you one little warning, though, it was at 1503, I think, that the Pope was elected just in a few hours. But there's always that other warning. It was a long time ago now, 800 years ago, that it took 2 years and 9 months. Hopefully we won't be in for that this time. But thank you very much to my guests once again for joining us here on the rooftops with that view of the Vatican. We will leave you for the moment here on France 24, and of course more coverage coming up.